Good morning. It is Tuesday, about 10:13. This is Jason Dean coming at you from Film Fanatic headquarters. Hope all is well. It is the officially the Christmas season, or at least it has been for a little while. So, thanks again for everyone's support. I just recently did an interview with my friend Ray Leone, and we just got reached over 1,000 views. So really appreciate the people checking it out. I've said before in previous shows, the trying to always expand the format of this channel and add, variety. My favorite thing to do for this channel, especially the YouTube channel, and it was also when I was doing it on Facebook. I was doing the Facebook Live videos. The my favorite thing to do are the interview segments. I really enjoy that. And again, like I say, it's always the thing where I love talking to people who have a or have had a background in the film industry, particularly like the horror indie world. I love hearing their perspective. I've had some people who are actors in that world, and I've also had my friend Sean, who also has experience in that world where he was a composer, and also he composed scores and music for documentaries and other films and some horror films. So I love that, getting that extra perspective, with how kind of behind the scenes and the mechanics of how all of that works, particularly in the like indie horror world, where typically the budgets are really little and they're really small, and they're really limited as far as what they can do on the technical side. And again, most of the stuff that I cover on this channel is the the more the grindhouse thing, and I there's something to be said about that whole genre where I feel like it forces the to a degree it forces the creators of a lot of these films to kind of use their imagination a little bit more, meaning with like practical effects, and not having the luxury of having a whole 2 years or whatnot to shoot a film. They have very very small budgets, so everything is super concentrated. They're not afforded the luxury of doing many takes, and in regard to, like I said, with their effects that they use, the same kind of thing, and it relied heavily on kind of pure imagination and practical effects. So Ray Leone was on the show last week, and he's a drum student of mine, and he's a good friend, super interesting guy. And through conversations, it came up that he's done many different things in his life, but he was talking about, when I told him, during our conversations, kind of outside of the drum lesson thing, I was talking about different. I was talking about, and then he was about different interests that we both have, and different to a degree certain careers we've had. And he brought up, and I said, oh yeah, I have my movie page, and I'm really, that's like my thing that I love to do on the side, and it's become more and more of a regular thing for me with film. And then he had alluded to that he has had quite a bit of experience working as an actor and also as a location scout for certain films. It's helping to assemble a cast, and also to a degree helping the director kind of shape the films. And so he had a lot of hands-on input with a lot of aspects, not just acting. So that spurred on the idea of getting him on the show. So that was a blast. We did that on Saturday, and I really appreciate everybody checking out the video. Like I said, it just hit over 1,000 views. So very cool. So stay tuned. That's my favorite thing to do, is to set up more and more interview segments and to kind of pursue that on a more, proactive level. So there'll be more things coming up. So stay tuned for that. And I really appreciate the support. And being, like I mentioned, the top of the show and the beginning of this whole video, it is, officially the Christmas season. I love the holidays. My favorite, like I've said in the past, my favorite is Halloween. I do I do a few extra videos that are Halloween centric around that season in October. I did the entire franchise of Halloween and movies that are tied to that whole mythology. I also, did a couple of other specialty things around it. I talked about how, what that holiday really means to me. But I've always been drawn to the holidays, Halloween and also Christmas. I do love Thanksgiving quite a bit. I love, the gathering of with your family and your friends, and you get to consume lots of food and all those kinds of things. And for me, growing up, the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Halloween has always been about movies for me. Growing up around Thanksgiving time and also Christmas time, typically when we would have these big dinner family gatherings, and especially now here in Maine where it's just a small group of us, we got really into the habit of watching movies together. So films have always been a huge integral part for me around the holidays. And also Christmas has always been that same thing for me as far as, lots of Christmas movies. Obviously for lots of people out there, millions of people out there, there's a sense of nostalgia around certain kinds of films. Last year I did a live show. Last Christmas I did a live show on Facebook of where I did a talk on It's a Wonderful Life. So that holiday means a lot to me. I've always enjoyed all of the pageantry, the ritual aspect of it. The gathering of with your friends and loved ones, exchanging presents. But the main thing, again, it always comes back to movies. So I'll probably be doing some more Christmas movies. I'm going to be doing a Christmas movie today, so I'll probably be doing some more. And I'll probably do another Christmas special on Christmas Day. So stay tuned for that, or maybe Christmas Eve. We'll see how it goes. So the other day I always talk about the two main places that I go to buy films. I always buy new Blu-rays. About 95% of the films that I cover on this channel are movies that I own. I pretty much do. Whenever I cover a movie, I always try to cover films that I actually own, so that way, and it always tends to be a thing of where if it's something that I've owned, I've seen it numerous times, so I know a little bit about it. I know a little bit about the workings of it and kind of the origins of the story of how that movie was created, and plus I've just seen it lots of times. So I typically do reviews on films that I own. I used to, way back when back on when I was just doing Facebook with Film Fanatic, I was doing a series of where it was centered on lots of trailers. And I write a little post about that, or maybe, and then a lot of the coverage would be of the videos. It would be centered on films that I saw in the theater, not necessarily movies that I own. I've kind of switched that up. I still do those kinds of things when I go to certain movies, and they leave a real deep impression on me. I'll cover them like within those days because it's still fresh in my head. I typically don't do the trailer thing anymore. But I switched gears to where now I'm pretty much focused on doing all things from my collection. So the two places that I always go to buy movies, whenever I buy new Blu-rays, brand new Blu-rays, particularly with the majority of the films that I have on this channel that are centered on the horror exploitation world. I of course go to Blue Moose, which I talk about all the time, and got the cup right here. My friend Nikki got that for me for my birthday this year, so that was pretty sweet. And also a gift certificate. Gift certificate. It's always really nice when friends really understand your tastes and what you're into. So that was pretty awesome. She's a pretty awesome lady. So for new releases, I always go to Bill Moose, and I don't really buy DVDs anymore. Occasionally I will if I come across something, a movie title that might be really obscure, or something I've been seeking out and it might be hard to find, and it's like, say it's really really cheap, then I'll usually pick it up if it's a DVD. The last DVD I think I bought was quite a few months ago. I bought this movie called The Duelist, which was a Ridley Scott movie I've been wanting to see forever, and it's kind of a rare movie. I kind of consider it a pretty obscure movie, and it was his first film. I'm a huge fan, particularly of the early work of Ridley Scott. So I bought that for like $2 months ago, and I really love that movie. But typically, I try to only buy Blu-rays, just because of the obvious difference with the quality and the picture and the sound, and because I'm such a nerd around films, I love special features. With DVDs, they don't really, aside from the picture not being and the quality not being as good on Blu-ray, DVDs now, they don't really pack them like they used to with special features. They typically have really like generic, behind the scenes special features, which can be kind of interesting, but they're pretty generic and kind of boring, and they're not really as exciting as they used to be. They used to be back in the day where DVDs would come out of certain films and they would pack it with hours and hours of things, with special features. That's changed so much over the years. Now I see that all of that stuff is in the Blu-ray format, and plus it's overall the quality of the picture, the sound, and then the artwork. You just get more bang for your buck, especially if you're a real big fan of film, and if you're like an avid collector like I am. So I always buy new stuff at Blue Moose, and then used stuff I always go to Goodwill. There's a couple of Goodwills here where I live. I live in the big city of Northport. There's a Goodwill in Belfast, and there's a Goodwill in Rockland. The one in Belfast is pretty decent at times. I have found some really good films that I was really surprised to find. A couple of really great documentaries and a few other things. And occasionally I buy some Blu-rays there. But the one in Rockland, Maine, the Goodwill in Rockland, Maine, is really great. I have bought so many Blu-rays there that it's kind of crazy. I try to go there, once or twice a month. I'm in that area a lot, so I try to hit it up when I can and when I have a little bit of extra cash on me. But I've scored tons of movies there. I've gotten most of a pretty good sizable collection, or almost a complete collection now, of all of the Marvel superhero movies on Blu-ray. And they're super cheap. They're in really good quality, virtually perfect condition. They've all been used, but I've lucked out with not having any problems with them. So I was in there the other day. I went in, I think it was it was Sunday. I went down to the Goodwill in Rockland, and I had a pretty sweet score. I got this beloved classic, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I was really excited. I saw that they had this on Blu-ray. This overall, there's so many great Christmas movies. I might do a show, being that it is Christmas time. I might do a show where I talk about some of my favorite Christmas movies, because there's a lot. There's a lot of great Christmas movies, but a lot of films, like, for instance, like Die Hard with Bruce Willis. a great, amazing. It's an iconic Christmas movie. I love Christmas Vacation. That might arguably be my favorite Christmas movie with Chevy Chase. I picked that up about a year ago now. I picked that up on DVD at the Goodwill in Rockland. Eventually, if I see it on Blu-ray, I'll pick it up. But that's a deep. I love that movie so much. It's so funny, and it's funny watching that movie again because it's pretty. It's watching it as an adult. It's I forgot how kind of raunchy it is and how dirty it actually is, and all of these kind of sexual innuendos. Compared to when I saw it when I was a kid, it's really funny. And of course, It's a Wonderful Life, iconic. Just an amazing film, beautiful film. I watched that again last year. I hadn't seen that in a long time, and that had a different impact on me watching it as an older adult. It had a lot more of a sense of levity to it. It got a little bit. It was a little bit deeper than I thought. Than I remember it being. Watching it as a kid. It dealt with some kind of heavy adult themes and issues, but still a real entertaining Christmas movie. The other one I really love is Elf. I think that's with Will Ferrell. I think that's a really great Christmas movie. I think it's really funny. When I used to work at the teen center in Camden, we used to have movies were actually a big part of when I worked there. When I used to work at the teen center, we used to have this really giant television in this like lounge area, and we had a bunch of chairs and couches, and it was a really cool kind of spot for the kids to come in and relax. But we used to every Friday we would do movie days, and so we used to watch movies all the time. And Elf was probably the most popular Christmas movie that we used to watch. Kids would love that, and kids always loved. I think that movie is perfect because of Will Ferrell's kind of delivery, but it's a great film in regards to like it's great for so many different age groups, like young kids to old people like me. It's just it's got that magic to it. And another movie which is definitely a little bit outside of the traditional norm, Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick. I did a show way back when, or actually last month, not all that long ago. I did a show on Stanley Kubrick, who is my favorite director of all time. His last film that he did was Eyes Wide Shut, and it's a really kind of messed up, disturbing film in a lot of ways, and very strange and mysterious. And it's a very enigmatic film, and it's a very thought provoking film. But to me, it's a Christmas movie. The whole backdrop of the story and the whole like environment where that film takes place is in New York City during Christmas time. So like virtually every scene in that movie, there's a Christmas tree, there's Christmas lights, there's Christmas decorations. There's so much Christmas in that movie. It's kind of wild. So I look at that as being like a Christmas movie, even though it's a kind of a disturbing, very incredible, very strange film. Yeah, and so I look at that definitely as being a Christmas movie, and and then the other one, Billy Bob Thornton, Bad Santa, an amazing film, one of the greatest comedies I think ever made, super raunchy, super dirty, and just like, just drop dead hilarious. You just every time I've seen that film, you just literally laugh your ass off. But I was in Goodwill and I found this. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I was super excited, and it was only I paid $9 for it. I paid $9 for it, but I didn't realize I did not know that this was even released on Blu-ray, so I picked it up, and I watched it the other night, and this was a movie literally that I watched every Christmas. It was a regular part of my diet as a kid during Christmas time. Always on television, always on cable. I believe I probably at some point, or my family, we had a DVD copy of it, and it was something I watched all the time. And watching it again, and I watched it last night, I I felt like this movie, I mean, still holds up, and it feels like, for me, it's probably my favorite Christmas film of all time, like the quintessential Christmas movie. And it just really has a really great narrative and great story about, you know, about the, I guess, the core idea of what Christmas is or can be for people. It's just amazing. But the other thing I was so blown away by was how short it is. I remember growing up as a kid and then seeing it, after that when I was getting a little bit older. I always like regarded this as being like a regular, film or movie or animated movie created by Dr. Seuss. And when I watched it last night, I was like, "Holy mackerel! It's only like 20 minutes long." And I was like, "Holy mackerel!" Like, it was crazy. And I was really kind of blown away by that. I always remembered this film, or at least I felt that this film was like a full length feature. And I'm like, "Holy mackerel! This is only 20 minutes long. Like, that's insane." And this Blu-ray version, it's literally the first time I've ever seen it on Blu-ray. I didn't, like I said before, I didn't realize there was a Blu-ray version of this film. I was like, "Holy mackerel!" So I got to buy it. So I bought it. And one of the things that I loved about growing up as a kid watching this film, I was, like for most people out there, my first introduction to horror films were the classic Universal monsters. So growing up, I was, enamored with Bela Lugosi as Dracula, Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman, and Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. Those, like for millions of people, I would probably say that was like probably, when they came out of their womb, that was probably, you know, seeing Dracula and seeing the Wolfman and Frankenstein on the big screen, or like even at home, that was probably what did it for everyone. That like kind of lit your imagination off and piqued your curiosity as a kid. And because I know for me it was, that was like what started the whole kind of love of horror. And those are all like iconic monsters that will be around forever. I was particularly really drawn to the Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., but I was especially enamored with Frankenstein, played by Boris Karloff. And I remember seeing like Abbott Costello and the Abbott Costello movie with Frankenstein and Dracula. I was a huge Abbott Costello fan as a kid, and that was like a blending of comedy and horror. That really was, another pivotal movie for me. So I grew up watching, and I can't leave out the creature from the Black Lagoon. Like, that's an amazing film. I think a little bit. I think sometimes with that film, because it's part of that whole canon and it came out that same time, I feel like that movie is a little bit overlooked and underappreciated. But that's one of my favorites. I just think that's an amazing film. I do want to get the Universal monster movies on Blu-ray. I have a few of them on DVD, but at some point I will definitely get them on Blu-ray. So growing up, I was a huge, Boris Karloff fan, and I have a lot of his films. Probably my favorite Boris Karloff movie, which I think was one of his earlier films. I believe he did it after Frankenstein, the Body Snatcher, and he essentially plays this person who robs. He's a grave robber, and it's an incredibly scary movie. It's really kind of disturbing when you think that this movie came out in the 40s. the The content and the subject matter is kind of taboo, and it's a very scary movie. Like, I've always loved that movie, and that's probably my favorite Boris Karloff movie. And since then, I've obviously seen all of his other films. The Mummy, the classic, the classic film that it is. I have most of all of those films, the Universal monster movies, the original ones. I have those on VHS, but those are beloved classics. So as a kid, I got obsessed with Boris Karloff and Frankenstein. Like that was it for me. And I remember as a kid watching when I remember when I first saw this movie and I realized that Boris Karloff plays the Grinch. It just like as a little kid, it just blew my mind. Like wow, like this is from a child's perspective, I was like wow, Frankenstein is playing. I didn't think of Boris Karloff as the actor. I thought of him as Frankenstein, and I never saw the difference. Like I didn't understand the difference between acting versus a fictional character. They were like the same thing. So when I was a kid and I saw this movie when I first saw this movie and I realized wow, like it's Frankenstein playing the Grinch. It just made me fall in love with the film even more. And watching this again, I don't know, it really confirmed my own kind of taste of like I would say that this is like overall my favorite Christmas tale or Christmas movie. Because there's like I said, I ran off a few titles earlier in the show, and I know I left out quite a few movies, but those are ones that I just think of like say kind of an informal list of Christmas favorites. But I would say How the Grinch Stole Christmas is easily my favorite of that entire canon. It's hard to believe it came out in 1966. It still holds up. It's entertaining. The animation is just astounding. The original animation for the film when it was in development, there's some really great, interesting special features on here, and they show a lot of the stills and the original footage where it was all pencil drawn, but it was all black and white, and it gives it a really interesting vibe. It makes it a little bit darker, but the animation for this film still holds up. It's just amazing, particularly around the scene of where when the Grinch goes into Whoville and steals all the presents, thinking that he has gotten rid of the whole Christmas season, and then the town of Whoville is still out celebrating, and it just like baffles the Grinch's mind. How is this possible? He thought in his mind he thought Christmas was just consumer driven. It wasn't. It was just about presents and the material things. So he felt if he got rid of all of those things, taking or the scenes where he takes all the Christmas trees away, all the Christmas ornaments, steals all everybody's presents, that he was going to eliminate Christmas. But then he realizes the people in Whoville are still celebrating, and it's not really for what they are, for what they believe. Christmas isn't really a materialistic thing. It's about like it's a celebratory kind of ritual thing of where you're participating in the pageantry and the love of friends and family, and it goes a lot deeper. It's not really about the material thing. And watching this film really showcases that the essence, I feel, at least for me, what Christmas is about. And there's the whole scene of where after the Grinch has all the presents and he feels like he did his job and basically stole Christmas from everyone. And then he is initially shocked when he sees the town folk of Whoville are all out still celebrating Christmas like nothing happened or nothing changed. He suddenly is kind of shocked that wow, like I thought I stole Christmas from them. I thought I took everything. This is what Christmas is. So why are they still celebrating? And then you see his character change, and he realizes, oh no, it's really not. It's really not about this material thing. It's really about celebrating with friends and family and loved ones, and that kind of connection, that bond. And it runs like deeper. It runs a lot deeper. And there's a scene where he has his sleigh that's filled with all everything that he's stolen, and it's slipping off of the mountaintop, and he tries to to save it from falling, and then he eventually grabs the sleigh. But then he decides, after he has this epiphany, he he decides to go and celebrate with all of the townsfolk, and decides to give everything back. And the animation for that whole sequence is just amazing. Like I mean, to think that this came out in '66 is just incredible. And I know there's been like obvious other remakes. The other thing I forgot too, that this is essentially a TV movie. Like it's great. It's such a great story for kids and for adults. It was directed by Chuck Jones, and of course the narration by Boris Karloff is just iconic. It stars Dal McCannon, Wolfgang Voltz, who does the all of the singing in this production, Wilfred Herbst, and there's been lots of other kind of incarnations, or I guess you could say remakes of the Grinch. There was the Jim Carrey one that came out about, I think, maybe almost 20 years ago. I haven't seen that. I remember seeing that in the theater, and I remember it was pretty good. It was directed by Howard, I believe, and Jim Carrey plays the Grinch. I remember that movie was pretty good, pretty decent. I don't remember it being great, and it was interesting. I remember that movie being really long too. Like they made, a movie that was like over 2 hours. That's funny because it's based on a very short story that's only 20 minutes long. And I remember my early impression was that it felt like it was dragged out, and you know, they tried to milk it too much for the essence, and took it away from kind of the essence of what the story was, and by making it into a full length feature. But again, that was so long ago. It is a film that I do want to see again. I probably will rent soon. I haven't seen it in many years. And then relatively recently, there was another animated version of it, and I think they turned it into like a Grinch series. I haven't seen any of that. I've heard that they're pretty good. Maybe at some point I'll see those. And the other funny thing that just came out, or the trailer was just released. There's a new slasher movie apparently that is centered around the Grinch, where he's like this murdering, this crazy murdering psychopath, and it's like a slasher movie, but it's told from the Grinch's perspective. So I don't know, that could be wild and crazy, but it's and again, the special features are really interesting. It's a little bit strange. It's the one of the documentaries. They have a Phil Hartman from the SNL days hosts it, and it's kind of an odd documentary. It's a little bit weird, but when they go into the origins of the story, it's very interesting. They go really into detail, and they show lots of these stills in the original footage for this movie, and it's pretty fascinating. It was very cool to see it in this real kind of primal state without the color. And of course, this story was created by the famous and one of the most popular children's books writer of children's books, Dr. Seuss. Of course, responsible for Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham, The Lorax, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and originally this story came out in 1957. So it's timeless classics that hold the test of time. One Fish, Two Fish, Oh the Places, Horton Hears a Who. I mean, so many. So watching this again as an adult or an old man, I have to say that this is definitely my favorite Christmas Tale movie of all time. Super excited I bought this on Blu-ray, and it was, again, like I said, I was blown away by how short it actually is. It's 20 minutes long. The special features on here, there's quite a few. They're pretty decent. There's one that's really good. They're actually far longer than the movie is, which I thought was pretty funny. But the transfer of the original film to Blu-ray, and with the sound and the picture is pretty amazing. So I was super excited I got this. That's one of the things you just never know what you're going to find at Goodwill for used things. It's pretty awesome. So I'm sure there's maybe a few people out there who have never seen this movie. It's probably pretty rare, but I definitely recommend, if you haven't seen it, definitely check this out. This is like an essential Christmas classic. For my money, the best Christmas movie ever created by the famous Dr. Seuss. And if you get a chance, particularly if you get to see it on Blu-ray, for in this format, it's pretty amazing. So this is Jason Dean. So stay tuned. We'll be doing some more. I'll probably be doing some more Christmas movie shows, and along with other things that I keep that I keep doing. So thanks again for the support. Really, really appreciate it. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe to it, and we will see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.